Welcome to the Commercial Construction Trades panel this afternoon. I'm your host. My name is Colleen Jones, and I work for the Liberty School District. And today we have the honor of having three panelists here who will be able to tell you a little bit about where they work and what they do. And then we will have a few questions for them as a panel. And then we will also open it up for questions from you, our audience. So at the bottom, you can put those questions in at any time, and we will get started. Just want to let you know that we will end this session at 1:40 today, so you can plan on it from there. But we thank you for being part of this and taking time out of your day to learn more about the construction industry. And I also want to thank our panelists for taking time out of their day today to share about what they do. So I think we'll get started with Samantha first. Would you tell us a little bit about who you are and where you work?
Absolutely. My name is Samantha Howell. I work for a local division of the EMCOR Group. We are here locally a mechanical contractor. So what that means is we work on the HVAC in commercial buildings like your schools, like hospitals, office buildings, those sorts of things. And if you don't know what HVAC means, it's heating and cooling, how we keep things comfortable for you guys while you're inside the buildings.
Thank you, Samantha. Victoria?
Yeah, my name is Victoria Smith. I work for the RMR Group. That's a property management and investment firm. I'm an assistant manager with them, do all sorts of things, accounting, negotiating, contracts, meeting with Samantha and Brandon about projects, just all sorts of things.
Thank you, Victoria. Brandon?
My name is Brandon Greason. I'm the Director of Business Development for MTS Contracting. We are a specialty contractor. We do all commercial work. A very majority of the work that we do is outside. All the work that we do could kind of be classified under the umbrella of waterproofing. And that looks like brick restoration, concrete restoration, sealant installation, which includes caulking and building cleaning and sealing, all those kinds of things. We do no new construction. It is all to improve existing structures.
Thank you for those great introductions. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what an average day looks like in your company?
Okay, I'll start. Working for, very much like Brandon, working in the sales department, we serve our customers. So each and every day can be very different based on the different needs of our customers. It could include emergency response. If it's very, very cold outside and the building has no heat, it's oftentimes working with those customers, coordinating, getting a technician on site to fix the problem. And it can also be, meetings like with Victoria mentioned earlier, negotiating contracts, working on the paperwork side of things to make sure that those types of failures don't happen. So it's a wide range. We try to keep my day planned as easily as possible, but sometimes those emergency situations do arise. And it happens a lot in the commercial construction world.
I would say my day is very similar to Samantha and probably Brandon's. While they're working with clients, I have tenants that I need to keep happy. You never know what's gonna come up with them. Try to keep the day, pretty loose so you can deal with whatever comes up. Today I had to try to figure out why a tenant space didn't get cleaned. I still don't have an answer, but that was not something that was on my to-do list today. It changes all the time. I also worked on accruals, which is the accounting side of things today. There's always just something different going on and you don't really know what your day is going to look like.
Well, I'll approach this from the standpoint of one of our field guys. We have three basic kind of divisions of worker that work for us. We have concrete finishers, we have masons, and we have caulkers. So depending on what your job is, if you're a concrete finisher, your day is going to look different each day. And because we don't do any new construction, you're never on a job for more than a few weeks at a time. You know, with new construction, you're going to be on a job for several months or possibly even a couple of years, depending on how big the structure is. But our jobs are, we do big jobs, but because we're fixing things, we're not on them as long. So you're never on a job usually longer than a few weeks. You're usually with a smaller crew than you would be if you were working in new construction. If you're a mason, you're going to be on the side of buildings. The same with the caulker. Some of our jobs, if you're a caulker or a mason, you're going to be possibly hanging off the side of a building several stories up. So you have to really not be afraid of heights and enjoy that kind of work. But the great thing is you're always outside. The job changes from day to day based on what you're doing that day. And you get to move on to a new job quite frequently.
Okay, well, thank you. So you mentioned within your industry several different types of jobs as well. So if this is a high school student wanting to know, how do you gain skills in that area? What are some things that you might recommend for them to start looking into or shadowing, or how do you get started with some of those skilled trades that you mentioned?
Sure. I started in this industry. I did go to college, but in the summers when I was in college, I worked for MTS. So I was a laborer every summer. I learned a lot of things just by watching the guys that I was with. Our company is not a union company, so we don't have any kind of apprenticeship. But if you were to come in and work for us, like in the summers as I did, to start off with, then you're going to learn quite a bit just by going and watching other people. And you would kind of, depending on your skill in that particular area, that would probably be where you would kind of take your route. So if you're working with concrete finishers and that's something that you enjoy and you're good at, and you demonstrate that you can do that, that would probably be the route that you would want to take. But as far as what you can do now while you're in high school, a lot of the stuff that we do involves math. So that's an important skill to have. But other things would just be a good communicator, be willing to learn. You need some problem solving skills, because there are times on some of the jobs that we do where a building may be experiencing a leak and we don't really know where it's coming from until we get in and we open up the building, meaning we take some bricks out of it or stone, whatever it may be. And you have to kind of figure out from there what the next step is. So you've got to be able to solve those problems. You need to be able to work well with other people, because you're going to be on a crew with some other people. And you need to be able to take direction. And, if you work your way up, you need to be able to give direction as well.
Okay, how about either one of you ladies? What would be some advice you would give to high school students about how to get into some of these trade positions?
We have building engineers here, and you can follow somebody around for a day if you wanted. You can follow me around for a day if you wanted. If you get a chance to do something like that, I say take it. As a high schooler, you don't know what you're going to enjoy and what you're not going to enjoy unless you try, and see kind of what a different day looks like for somebody.
For me, my best piece of advice would be to don't make assumptions about what you think the construction industry is. There are a lot of supporting roles out there within the construction field. You don't just have to carry the tools. I mean, if you want to, we need you to carry tools as well. But there are plenty of supporting positions, and it's all really about finding the right culture that fits your personality, finding the right team members, the right people that you associate with. So don't be afraid to explore those options and really, you know, sometimes it might not sound like it would be something you'd want to do, and you may just end up loving it. So keep your mind open when it comes to the construction industry, and you know, like Victoria said, do some internships, do some site visits, you know, give every industry or trade a chance.
Okay, awesome. So we've had a question come in about what commercial construction is. So could some of you define what that looks like in the Kansas City area?
Commercial construction would be anything that is not residential, residential meaning houses. So Samantha kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. That can also include school buildings like that you all are in on a daily basis. We do a lot of work on schools every summer, but schools, hospitals, office buildings, condominiums, strip malls. What else am I forgetting, ladies?
Churches.
Warehouses. Yeah.
Anywhere that's not a residence, that's not a home.
If you don't live there, then it's pretty much commercial in our eyes.
So mainly businesses is really what they're talking about, and that can vary in size too, from a large building to a smaller building as well. Just like Brandon was talking about with the strip mall, that can be a small building as well. So
absolutely.
Okay, so another question has come in about math. So you mentioned math and that's something that's important in this industry. They want to know what kind of math that is used.
Sure.
So it's probably hard to remember back to the classes that you had in high school, but you know, what are some math calculations that you folks do, or some of the contractors do?
Yeah. If you're working in the field, and particularly if you're working with concrete, like part of what we do, you've got to be able to make conversions between different things. You measure concrete in yards. So when you order concrete from Geiger or wherever it may be, you've got to be able to tell them how many yards you need. You've got to be able to convert feet to yards and all those kinds of different things. You've got to know volume, because when you pour concrete, obviously you're not just pouring a thin surface, you're pouring it a depth also. So length, width, height, all those kinds of things that you learn are in math are very important.
I'm going to say, you know, I'm not great at math. I'll be honest with you. So there are roles that even if you are not good at math, you can still work in the construction field. Don't be afraid of that. But if you do and are good at math and you want to work in the construction field, looking into engineering type math classes are really going to be the best bet for you.
I deal a lot with accounting and percentages, things that I never thought I would deal with math-wise. So just a basic overall math for me, but accounting is very important when it comes to the property management side of things.
And let me say, don't let that scare you away. I mean, that's,
oh no,
yeah, it's not, you don't have to know calculus to be able to do what we do. And if it's a struggle, I mean, it's not, you learn it quickly after a while. I mean, we've got guys that have been working for us so long that they can look at a sidewalk and know off the top of their head, you know, how many yards it's going to take of concrete to pour that. So it's like anything else. It just comes with practice.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And somebody will teach you what you need to know when it comes to the math stuff. I mean, you just need kind of a basic understanding of what's going on.
Okay, another question coming in. Is it better to have a degree to get into your career field, or the ones you've mentioned, or is a high school CTE certificate acceptable?
think there's a need for various types of degree or completion certificates. There are very acceptable entry-level jobs, like Victoria was mentioning, a building engineer, or somebody that can work in our dispatch office with just a high school diploma. So don't feel the need that you have to have a continuing education degree to get into our field. My degree is in entrepreneurship. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with sales in the construction industry, but I do have one. So it always helps to have some sort of degree if you're going to be on the business side. If you want to be an engineer, obviously you've got to have an engineering degree. And when I say engineer, I mean that differently from a building engineer. A building engineer is going to do general maintenance, and it's classified as something a little bit different than working with actual drawings and the design and the construction phase of building ground up commercial buildings.
If you are lucky too, or you ask around, a lot of these places will help you further your education. So we have building engineers, which Samantha just touched on. All of my guys have degrees in something, but two of them started off as apprentices, and their previous companies pretty much paid for all of their schooling.
And it wouldn't be necessary for you to have a college degree to work for us in the field. We have quite a few of our guys that don't have college degrees. And I mean, then there are people that work in our office that do have them. So it's like Samantha talked about, there are multiple ways that you can be engaged in the construction industry. It's not just the ones carrying the tools. If that is what you want to do, that's great. And that you wouldn't need a degree necessarily for one of those jobs.
And so it sounds like several of your folks have started out at maybe a ground level or a basic level, and then they've moved up. I mean, the chances of someone starting up in a higher position, what are your thoughts about that? Is it typical for people to just kind of move up?
Yeah, so we, in my industry, we love it when somebody's first starting off and you can teach them what they need to know, and they don't necessarily have a different company's way of doing something. So you can kind of mold them into what they need to do, how they need to do it. You definitely can come in higher up though, as a property manager or on our property engineering side. You can definitely move into those roles, but we love it when somebody wants to stay with us and they're able to move up through the company.
The same for us. We have guys that have been here for a long time that started out as kind of laborers, which I talked about earlier, but then they work their way up to foreman, and then, you know, they get to where they run jobs on their own, and they're still in the field, but they're making pretty good money still on an hourly wage. We have 5 project managers in this office here, and a few of those guys actually started in the field, and then they worked their way up to project manager. So they're in the office and they go out and they estimate projects for us. We have another estimator here who has a degree in construction management from Missouri State. So he kind of did the thing that I did, where he worked in the summers while he was going to college, got a great degree in construction management, and now he's one of our project managers. So it kind of depends on your level and comfort and what you want to do.
So Brandon, you mentioned working in the summers and that kind of thing. And I think that a lot of our participants who are high schoolers might want to know, are there jobs in the summer that a high school student could do? And what would be the age level for them to get started?
Yeah, for us, usually it's going to be around, you're going to have to be 18 or older probably to come work for us, just because of insurance reasons and some of the equipment that we deal with and the places that we work. It's a safety issue. And so we have to have you be 18 before we can let you come start with us.
For us, we are a union contractor. So getting started and beginning really starts with the apprenticeship programs through our local unions. So if you have a trade that you'd like to start exploring, Your high school or counselors should be able to help you get connected with those unions and the best way to get that started. We do have those same limitations on age when it comes to the commercial side of things, but the residential side of construction is always a little bit different. It may be easier for some of you to transition by doing some summer work with a residential company. What we really like to see is engagement from the youth or our applicants in some sort of trade that is similar to ours. It doesn't have to be commercial construction. It can be residential. It can be lawn and landscaping for all that matters. So, think more broadly on the building services if you're looking for a summertime job that will help build your resume.
That's a really good point. That would be the same for us too. Someone who's maybe does some residential stuff in the summer with carpentry, or there are plenty of places that you need to go pour someone a new driveway, those kinds of things. It's the same basic concept for what we do. If you're finishing a driveway, you can come finish concrete for us.
So what do you look for when you're hiring an employee? What are some of the traits that you're looking for, or qualities that a person possesses when they come to interview with you?
We're looking for communication skills. If you can I communicate with all sorts of different types of people. I need to know how to talk to accountants. I need to know how to talk to construction workers. I need to know the different communication types. And that's really what we are looking for. If you can communicate well with different kinds of people, you're going to excel.
We look very heavily at your past history and your work ethic, how hard that you work or how hard you've worked in another job. And when I mean hard, I don't mean like, hey, did you lift, 50 pounds all day, every day? Just a commitment to your job. We ask for 8 hours a day from everybody in our office, and we ask that those 8 hours are the most productive that you can be at the time. So that's going to go a much further long ways when in our interview process than anything that's typed up on your resume. It's that when you show up to work, you really want to be there and you want to be engaged. And I think a lot of that has to do with how much you like your job and how much you enjoy being there. Because when you enjoy the type of work that you do, working hard is not difficult. It makes your day go by faster. You actually enjoy the people that you work with. So, keep that in mind and don't be afraid to try different things out, because you do have to find out what you like and the type of people that you like to work with. So don't be afraid of having to jump around if you need to in the future. That's completely okay.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. And some of the things I touched on earlier, being a communicator and being willing to learn. But work ethic is another thing, just like Samantha said. Are you going to come and show up and work hard every day? Because there's going to be 2 or 3 other guys that you're working with each day. And if they're working hard and busting it, then they're going to expect you to be doing that too. So are you going to be doing that? Or are you going to be one that's kind of loafing around or sitting around and not helping out as much as you can? But because if that's the case, you're probably not going to last very long. So you want to work hard. And if you show that you have that work ethic and the desire to learn and you can communicate well, then you're going to move up in our company and you're going to be able to eventually get to a place where you're one running the jobs.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move on to one of the questions that's in the chat, and that is about the biggest challenges that you face in your position or in your industry.
I think for all construction, one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now is having enough skilled labor in the workforce. This is not something that's new or been a surprise to anybody. We've known for a long time that our workforce is aging and there's not as many young people like you guys interested in the field and interested in the trades. So that's a big part of it. And then, because we're in the middle of 2020, supply chain is an issue for a lot of construction companies because of the coronavirus, and there's a lot of manufacturing companies that are down right now. So getting materials for the jobs is very difficult for not just us, but just about everybody, whether you're in the residential side of things or not. So that's something that we're all trying to work through, just right now because of the way, the situation is.
Yeah, skilled labor is a big problem. A lot of our field guys are older, and so it's something that we're trying to get an infusion of, is some youth to work and fill some of those positions that we need. Other than that, I would just say for every construction field, usually it's time and money is usually a challenge. You get on a job, and for us, sometimes the job ends up being more than it was what you had thought. So, and this can happen with new construction too, but for us specifically, what we're doing, sometimes water comes in buildings. I said waterproofing is kind of the main thing that we do. We do our best to locate where it's coming in and try and fix that. And sometimes that's not always the case, where, it could be coming in multiple places. So we do our best to fix things right and to do it right the first time, but sometimes there are other things that you have to add on, and that can be a challenge.
I agree with what both of them have said. Coming from my end, time management and budgeting a job, those are always difficult things. 2020 has not been easy on anyone. Actually, Samantha's company is doing a job for us, and I found out yesterday that some of the parts won't be here until February. So that wasn't something we were expecting, but you just kind of have to roll with the punches. Yeah, we weren't expecting it either, but you just roll with the punches. But every day there is challenges in all three of our jobs, and that's just something that you have to be able to work and overcome as they come about.
So it sounds like there's lots of teamwork, even though it's between different companies, that you have to rely on each other quite a bit because you're waiting for the supplies to come in, or you're waiting on someone else to finish up a job before your next crew can come in. So looks like there's lots of teamwork that's involved in all of your areas there as well. So the next question is the opposite of the last one. What's the biggest joy that you see in your job or in your company? What fills your bucket every day?
Nothing is better than seeing a job through to completion. That's probably the most exciting part. Or if you can't physically see it, at least feel it. For me, we're in charge of keeping your buildings warm in the winter and keeping them cool in the summer. And schools and education facilities are sometimes the most high risk, especially when it's very cold out. The learning environment for students is very important. And if it's cold in a classroom, we know that you just don't learn as well as you could if it was the right temperature. So getting something back up and running after there's an emergency breakdown, or seeing a job completely finished and starting up, is just the best. It really is an awesome experience.
I would say the same thing. Some of the work that we do, it's considered restoration work because we do the brick restoration on the outside of a building, and we've completed several bigger projects lately. And so one of them was in the West Bottoms that was on a really old building, brick building that was not in good shape. It was discolored black just from all the years that it had sat there. We did a really large restoration project on that where we cleaned up the brick and we rebuilt the window openings and several other things where we were working both inside and out. And the final product was really amazing to see when you compared the photos when it was done to the photos from when we started. So those are really cool things you can see when you see a project through, like Samantha was talking about. And then I would also just say, when you're in the field and you're working hard and you go home at the end of the day, you feel like you have really accomplished something. That's how I felt. I know in the summers when I was working, it was hard work, it was hot. But when I went home at night, I knew that I had worked hard that day, and you earned your money and you feel good about it.
I would say some of my most challenging days are some of my best days. Once you're able to, if you have a problem and you're able to work it out, that's just one of the best feelings you can get. Whether it's a tenant, it's on the tenant side or it's on the construction side or with a vendor. Some of the most challenging days are my favorite days for sure.
Awesome. We all like to have jobs that we love and that we feel that self-satisfaction for. So I hope that's what each of you participants on the call, on the webinar here get to experience at some point in your career as well. A couple more questions that have come in, and it looks like we're starting to wind down here. What is the best way to pursue an internship in your companies?
I think most internships are usually supported through your education centers. So whether that be your high school, if it's a company like myself and Brandon's, you're probably going to have to be in college or some sort of college program in order to be an intern. But you can always get on the phone, make a phone call to any of these companies that you might find an interest in working in, and just ask them, how do I do this? How do I apply? Are you accepting? It is a difficult environment right now for internships because a lot of companies are actually not participating in them because of the COVID outbreak, whether that be because most people are working remotely from their homes, or they're trying to limit the number of people in their offices. It's not the ideal time frame right now, but I do believe that as soon as we get through this, those internships will open back up. And like I said, just seek help through your education centers, whether that be through your high school or any kind of trade program, through a community college or a four-year university will be able to help you secure those.
I totally agree with what Samantha said. Don't be afraid to ask around either, because I might not have something, but I might know somebody who does have something. So just getting yourself out there, putting yourself out there, asking around. It might not be exactly what you thought you were getting into, but it might lead to something better.
Yeah, I agree with what they said. I don't really have much to add on that.
Okay, so another question that popped up is about COVID. And so if some of your workers get COVID, you don't have to go into your extensive policies, but kind of overall, how are you handling it? And it looks like we're running down on time here. So that's a big question with little minutes left to answer.
For us, it would be the same as many other industries. If they're working, as I said earlier, our crews are usually small, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would be the same probably for a lot of other places where we would ask the person who's sick, obviously, to not come to work, and then the other people would probably need to quarantine.
Anybody in the construction field usually has enough people in the backlog to be able to call to replace that position. So yeah, we would immediately send people home. I will say that all of my employees, when they're on a job site, they are wearing a mask and they are abiding by the 6-foot social distancing rules as much as possible. We know in the construction field it's not always avoidable, but taking those precautions really helps salvage the integrity of your workforce. But it is a problem. It makes jobs take much longer to get completed. You've got temperature checks in the beginning of the day at your job site. If you leave the job site, you have to recheck in. There's a lot of things that kind of revolve into the moving pieces. But at the end of the day, we're still on a schedule to get and perform our job within a certain reasonable time frame. So we have to have the resources to put in place if we do lose staff due to being sick or having to quarantine, to replace those and still get the job done at the same time.
We're doing pretty much all those same things too, following CDC guidelines. Construction people, we have people in our buildings right now doing construction. We require they wear a mask, try to social distance. On the tenant side of things, I have buildings that usually have 1,000 people in them that have maybe 50 right now. There just aren't a lot of people coming in on the tenant side, which is really, it's a it's been helpful, but it's also a hindrance. It's helped keep our numbers down, way down, but we love to see our buildings full. So.
Okay, thank you. So one last quick question, and it is, if you could just give a piece of advice to the students that are on this webinar right now, what would that be? Think back to your high school self. What advice would you have liked to know?
I would just say to keep all your options open and to think big about what you want to do. Don't limit yourself or pigeonhole yourself into one particular job. If you can find something in the summer to do, be it residential, like Samantha talked about earlier, or something else where you think that it's going to give you some good experience and you can figure out if that's what you like, then I would by all means take that.
My piece of advice would be to participate in as many of these types of courses, classes, opportunities as possible. I definitely didn't have anything like this when I was in high school, where I could actually hear from industry professionals in various different types of jobs. And don't be afraid to ask, your parents and their friends, or your friends' parents, what they do and what they like about their job. Because those people that are actually in the workforce are going to be able to give you the best advice, and tell you how their days really look, so that you have something, to understand a little bit more about the types of positions that there are.
I 100% agree with both of them. Find something that makes you happy, something that you want to do every day, not something that you're dreading having to do, and be true to yourself. Just some people might think you should be doing one thing, but that's not what you want to do. Don't be afraid to do what makes you happy.
Well, we've come to the end of this session, and panelists, I certainly want to thank you for all of your insight that you've been able to pass on to our participants. And participants, thank you for being here today. We hope that you've learned something from these industry professionals, and we wish you the best of luck as you pursue your journey ahead. Have a great day.